Nemba Jimden the Shinshaban, Rajama, Yandaban, Zogasan, Ribadan, Shabson, Demban, Devarishaban, Jiden, Chamba, Jivun, Dubu, Kaloju, Lana Meba, Lada, Menam, Jedemban, Sanje, Jimden, the Beja, Shaja, Duba, Lasa, Zeno, Jedo, Jazuju, Demba Jimden, the Shinshaban, Rajama, Yandaban, Zogasan, Ribadan, Shabson, Demban, Devarishaban, Jiden, Chamba, Jivun, Kalo Juba, Lana Meba, Hada Menamje, Sanje Jumde, Bejawa Shaja Duba, La Chasano, Judo, Jazuju, Dama Jumden, the Shensheba, Jashamba, Yandaba, Zobe, Sanje, Riba, Shakunda, Devareshaban, Jiden, Chamba, Jubun, Dube, Kalo Juba, Lana Hada Menamje, Dama Sanje Jumden, the Bejawa Shaja Duba, Chasano, Judo, Jazuju, Kaze, Kanya, Zoho, Jatam. Sergeant no commanding Ganinji no churches. Tese Keba Jama Cha, and one number Kuma shot the Susan, Ishijazo, Sergeant Hombona, Trabanji, Sundana, Bombo Junior Jona Cha, and one Saint the Martin and Sendon Rawa Jona Cha, and one the Rachel Sebasum. Yame Jenjen Jona Cha, and one Gombo Tuji, Tamji, Kembe, Tembo. Sonamian Danger the Shenshala Charge and Taban the Central. Giving as one letter to Chidu to the majority of Shinjuja Charge. Trinity Lanya de Lavatala rather than Shingatamba Yunde. Gidilaya Charge and on the Washian Message and give up as on Rangi Simne Yonzo de Tenesanja de Kamara Remama. You must have a shiver the mellow lot and gentleman, the Sheshan of the Sonamdia and Jessica. Kovantum ne Jinjanda than Gadana Chirana. Sibe Solendro and Joarisho.
To the teacher, the blessed one, the one born, the Bodhisattva, completely perfected, fully awakened, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sutras, no other, supreme guide of history, teacher of us and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, blessed one, the glorious come, the subduer on the shadow I prostrate my offerings and go for
To the teacher, the blessed one, the one only,
the Bodhisattva, completely perfected, fully awakened, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, no other one, supreme guide of beings, teacher of arts and humans, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subdued on the Shaka, I prostrate my offerings and go forward to the teacher, the blessed one, the one only, for destroyer, completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, no other, supreme guide of beings, teacher of gods and humans, to you, the completely and fully awakened one,
the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer on the shadow.
I prostrate in the offerings and go forward. When the supreme among humans you were born on this earth, you placed yourself aside and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise and prostrate. With pure bodies,
Home supremely
pure, with the motion like a hot and hot,
family
and
and places
places in the three worlds.
to you.
With the supreme signs, faced like spotless moon,
Color like
gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the three worlds are none, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. Savior, having great compassion, the teacher having all understanding, the creator of infinite qualities like a vast ocean, to you the one gone to dustness I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from all affection, the virtues which raise one from the lower, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to the Dharma which aspires I prostrate. Those who are liberated and most sure path to liberation, holy faith, qualified in realization, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community virtuous postures. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, mirage, flame of light, an illusion of truth, a dream of flash, lightning, cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this direct extension of these subdue the flow of thoughts and be delivered from motion of suffering and aging, sickness, and
Sanje Shana Sanje Shana Chanju Bhato Dali Jasu Nagin Jasu Jasu Dola Pinche Sanje Jobre Show Sanje Shana Chanju Bhato Dali Jasu Nagin Jasu Jasu Sonam Ji Dola Pinche Sanje Jobre Show Sanje Shana Soju Shana Chanju Bhato Dali Jasu Nagin Jasu Jasu Dola Pinche Sanje Jobre Sanje Shana Soju Shana Chanju Bhato Dali Jasu Nagin Jasu Jasu Dola Pinche Sanjen Jobre Show.
I go for refuge into the Buddha, Lama, and through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other professions, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge into the Buddha, Lama, and through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other professions, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge into the night, to the Buddha, Lama, and Son. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other professions, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Pumea Bunga Nejemea, Dena Pume de Demea, the Shinshiba Pundemea, the Shinshiba Bajin, Geta Sanja Pumbun, Dena Rajin Yemea, Rajin and the Kameva, the Shingula Kamu, Kaji Shinju, Tadanya, Kajadanya Meva, the Chita, the Shinshiba, Geta Rajin Yemea, Shimu, Rajadan, the Shimada, Modo, the Shinshi, the Kam, Geta Pumbum, the Shinshiba Kayan, Tene, Tade, Danish, Tene, the Jonara, Pumana, Madam. The Shenshiba Kashima, the nation, and Yolo Mama Yama, Yon Liberty, Yon Lemba, the Shenshiba Jim, no bang in the stage, Nakajit nation. Maybe the Shenshiba there, and you want to be Kashinya, Tina Rashid, Dabu Muna. The Shaman, the year again, the Danya Lonjan, number Winja, Tombe the Shenshiba, Chitaku. 动物学家没学学，不同学家没学学，你的你们没学的，大部分都学过。大的没当老祖些喜欢的人可能有，大的他们老祖些喜欢的人可能有，看看这些学习。人们都会说有嘛，天天两个地方嘛，没见到多多些，让些见到多的3000年的，有的喜欢的都些300多万年没有，看到3000真的些400多了这些。这边200多万年这些喜欢都没就说这些喜欢了就。 天天找点东西，这些习惯了就，找完的了是没这些习惯到不些习惯到了就，你说你把我看见我不听说了，我没问你的，一些年没什么，白面的了差子。So I think so we are on page 173. Identifying the force opposing the understanding of the suchness. So it's kind of, so here trying to understand the force opposing the understanding of suchness, which means the obscurations or the defilement, or particularly here the misconceptions. So identifying the misconceptions and identifying the object that misconceived by the misconceptions. So saying in setting forth all phenomena are devoid of true existence, if one does not understand well what constitutes the true existence and what constitutes the grasping at the true existence. So the object that mistakenly conceived. So it's important to recognize or identify that. And once you be able to identify the object that misconceptions mistakenly conceived, and then based with that, you can understand the perceptions or the conception that misconceiving in that way or kind of truly existence is the what we call defilement, or is the obscuration, the obscure to the suchness. So grasping just so one's view emptiness will certainly go astray. So here Guide to the Bodhisattva Way states that without touching up on imputed entity, the absence of its reality cannot be grasped. So I think we should know that what we are negating. Are we negating, like for example, negating the truly existing of arisings, right? So negating the arising of the sprout, negating in the true nature or intrinsic natures. So does that mean we are negating and refuting the very kind of general arising of the sprout or not? So here the each philosophical kind of philosophical point of view, they have found their own the negation element. Some of the negation elements, like for example, the Siddhantic school, the Vaishaka school, what they are negating is self-sufficient I. So when negate self-sufficient I, it is not negating the self in general. Right? So and then we should know what is that self-sufficient I. So right, what is that self-sufficient I? What is that thought that conceiving or kind of grasping at self-sufficient I? So then you say self-sufficient I means the self that exists by itself without depending on five aggregates. Right? So the self or I that exists by itself without depending on the five aggregates. And then the question is, who which school are they really asserting that kind of self or I? And then it's the non-Buddhist school, there's Atma. So that when they assert the Atma, so which referring that the Atma or the self, which is independent, always independent from the five aggregates. So I think this is how they mistakenly conceive the Atma. How do they mistakenly conceive the Atma? So simply because they says, oh, Atma is your kind of ultimate soul of yourself, ultimate yourself. So, and why it is independent from the five aggregates? Because this is, because it is not the body, because it's not the feeling, because it's not your thought, because it's not your eye consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, but it's the owner of every kind of the aggregates, which possess the five aggregates. Right. So I think this is why they think Atma is something independent, self-sufficient existence. So same we when we argue with that, do you still think a forest as a singularities? And so because it is singularity or is singular, so therefore it should not be
right? Trees. So does that mean a forest is not trees? Trees means plural. A forest is a singular. So do you still accept a forest as the independent from the tree? Right. The same kind of, this is how they mistakenly, conceive and, propound, right? So they say this is the Atma, is the independent, right? So they use half reason, not full reason. So half reason because the self or Atma, the myself, is not the body, not the flesh, not the bone, not the air or space or the heat or voices, and not the eyeball or the air sense power, nose sense power, not the eye consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, even each mental consciousness are not the self. This is why, because my thought, my mind, so me is the possessor, and minds are the possessions that kind of the property of the self. So we can say, in that way, a forest should be independent self, right? So this forest, a forest tree, right? So the forest has trees, and the forest, a forest is not the trees. So do you still consider a forest is independent? If the forest is independent from the trees, so independent from the trees means now a forest and the trees are apple and orange, like they are cow and horse. So if that is the kind of, if that is the case, then you can, if you want to cut the trees, you can cut all of the trees and move the forest to another place. Then you still have trees because of the forest. So if this is not the kind of, if this is not the case, it's not really, logically approvable, then why the self or I, and has to be independent? So why do you think self, independent self, right? Independence, why you are alive, it is independent from the aggregates. When the bodies die, the self continues to remain existing and go to the next life. So like a forest moving to another place says, I don't like those trees, so I'm going to move another place. So all the my trees that die, now I have to go somewhere. So here this saying, identifying the force of opposing understanding of suchness. So so that's why the Shantideva says, first you need to know that what is the negation element, what has superimposed, right? So you are negating always superimpositional, not the conventional reality. So without touching upon imputed entity, the absence of its reality cannot be grasped. I think here the English term they use the grasping, grasp. So actually it is the recognizing, identifying, or the knowing the negation element. So because the Tibetan word they use Zimba. Zimba is the recognizing, apprehending, identifying, the all can be Zimba. So that's used and translated like great grasping. So identifying negation element, not necessarily you have a grasping of the imputed entity or the superimposition. So when you're grasping on the imputed entity, which means you believe that it truly exists. So here, thus, if the imputed entity, namely the generic concept, so what is to be negated? So imputed entity means imputed entities are kind of imputed entities in this means is a conceptually fabrication or the conceptually constructed the entity, which is the kind of private property of the thought. So sometimes you can say it's a focal object that is 100% belongs to the thought. This is the only you can find within the concept of the thought. Beyond the concept, they do not exist. Right? So here the imputed entity, namely the generic concept, what is to be negated, does not appear clearly to one's mind. So if you do not understand the very entity that we are, entity or kind of very, imputed entity that we are negating, and so the negation element does not appear clearly to the mind, it is said that one will not be able to pinpoint the absence of the object of negations. Therefore, if a clear sense of what is the how's that? Purported. So true existence. So purported means
what you express. Okay.
So true existence, what is the purported true existence? That which is said not to exist, as well as what phenomena are understood to be empty of the object to be negated. So I think here they're saying this, don't kind of, get mixed up, right? Like self-sufficient I and I, intrinsic I and I. By negating intrinsic I, if you think this is emptying the I in general, so you are not able to identify the negation, particular negation element. So you are not knowing what is negating. So many times the people, they say, when we negate the self-sufficient I, intrinsic I, Madhyamikas is they don't really accept the I that exists in general. So, understood empty of the negators, object to be negated, does not arise in one's mind, empty of the, as well as what phenomena are understood to be empty of, the object to be negated does not arise one's mind. So it would be impossible to ascertain clearly the nature of the absence of true existence as well as the nature of the emptiness. So the clearly understanding, the clearly understanding of what we are negating, right? Being able to make a distinctions that you are negating, in the Vibhashika school, you are negating self-sufficient I. You are not negating I in general. And then the Prasangika school, you are negating intrinsic I, but not the I in general. Right? So to to be able to understand that, to be able to identify negation elements that is separate from the conventional reality, and first you need to know or identify what is the negation element, how that been conceived by the misconceptions. So it is not enough to have identified true existence as postulated by the proponents of the philosophical tenets or their corresponding apprehension of true existence. So that's why I'm saying that non-Buddhist school, and then within the Buddhist school of thought, the Vaibhashika, Sotantaka school. So I think according to their kind of like capacity to how much they can penetrate ignorance. So with that, they have their own notion of negation element. Right? So yeah, corresponding definition. It is most essential, therefore, to have identified the to have identified well the innate grasping at the true existence. So there's a many negation elements. So for example, some are more subtle, some are more the grosso. For example, so if there are some people, they think there is no next life, there's no previous life. And the reason, because no one has witnessed that. And they says, who goes after the, body being cremated, and from the ash, what goes to the next life? Right. So, which means I don't see it. So I don't see is the reason, and by negating the unseeable object. Right. So if this is the one reason, this is a very, very kind of, what do you call it's not complete reason. So you believe, you sense many things that you could not see. Right. So then you have to accept my grandfather is not exist because I don't see it. Right. Or the air that I breathe in and out. So I don't believe I have breathed air, but I don't see it. Right. So if someone has kind of, so like for example, if you are eating the rice, so you don't know who cooked it, and you can say no one has cooked this rice, but I haven't cooked rice because I don't see it, right? So I don't see it's a very kind of low reason, and then the some things that I think some who believes in the creator and some of the non-Buddhist school, and they sees that you see the mountains, the shape of the mountains, the planets, the round circle of these planets, and there's each kind of sentient beings, different color, different shape, different also the abilities, like so. This is how do I know? So how do I know how they originated from? What is the origin of this different kind of shape of sentient beings? Right? Different shape of the leaves, and so there must be, because anything that you see in the shape, it has to be produced by something. So who is deciding the being has to be round, and who's deciding the banana has to be and it has its own shape. So they're always thinking that who decided? So that because there are many things, each different shape must have cause. So they forgot to look at their seed and the corporate conditions. They always want to know someone. There must be someone, some person. So then they says, so this kind of the ultimate, the cause, the origin of all kind of shapes, all kind of sentient beings. That is the, Bhagavan. That is the, that is the creators. Right? Sometime, in the sometime in the family, they say that, right? When you don't like, when you don't like the way the table is kind of, put it up, if you don't like the way the plates, and you always wonder who did that, right? And then it always comes in your mind the three persons optional. So 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 then you want to pinpoint, oh, that person, she must be the one that did all these things, or that person is something. So this is how people, they don't look at their own type of cosmic condition. They forgot to look close the evidence. They kind of, they forgot to look the evidence that very obvious to you, and you're rather trying to find some ultimate, the person that I can believe this person can do that. So I think this is also one of the negation element, that is the mistakenly conceived and constructed, and you believe you are believing in that. So the creator, and then the independent time, right? So this is how mistakenly conceived the independent time. The time, some people always think the time is one single entity that comes from the past and remain within the present, and then after a while it will go to the next in the futures, and then you circle back to the so it comes back, and just they think there's one single entity that goes from the past to the present and futures. So if that is the case, if this is what you're referring the time, so then this is like, like this, how say, the person who changed his, like, person who often every day changes costume. So same person, right? Today he is in the coat, tomorrow he is in, jacket, the day after tomorrow he is in the t-shirt. So the same person. So in that case, time is not a time; it is a permanent. So there is no. You can divide it in 3 times. It's a one single entity. So these are all negation elements. You have to know how this negation element constructed in your mind, right? So, and then find how this really people start to believing in that. So Shantideva was Shantideva was saying this without understanding how this, negation elements constructed by the misconceptions, and you cannot really, you cannot have a clear identification of negation element. If you do not have the clear identification of the negation element, you may negate everything. Right? So independent time, and then the self-sufficient I, and then like intrinsic.
Geshe-la, really quick. So intrinsic and self-sufficient. I've heard that there were 2 separate things, but are they the same? I know self-sufficient is like it produces on itself, like it doesn't require anything, and then like inherent is Like it continues on like the Atman?
No, inherent and intrinsic are more subtle than the self-sufficient. Self-sufficient is much grosser, the kind of, so which means it's independent, like, myself, me as a person, right? Me as a person is independent from this body, from this consciousness, right? Because this body and consciousness belongs to me. So therefore, so now it belongs to me is I'm the possessor, these are the possessions. So in that way, right, you believe there is independent eyes, which is they're going to call it the Atma. Now intrinsic and inherent means every entity, like for example, right? So even the Sotantic school, minority school, they all negate. There is no self-sufficient I. There is no I that's independent from the body and mind, but the I, which has to be, exists inherently. Because what we say is, I am here, and other people pointed to your body says, you are there, right? Where have you been? So they're pointing at the body. So this is why the Sotantic Kusumana, they all says the I, the self, should exist inherent, right? Inherent means it has to be in here, right? In here, within the body, or if not in the body, it has to be in here within the consciousness. So there are some kind of illustrations from the five aggregates which represent the self or I. So this is what they mean, the I or the self-sufficient, that inherent I, intrinsic I. Right? So the Prasangika school is saying that, yes, the self that exists by depending on the body, they exist by depending upon consciousness, right? But self is not findable, right? When you examine the self, what you can find is the self being totally absent within the mind and the body. The Sotantic school, minority school says that is kind of negating too much. It's kind of annihilations. And when it says within the aggregates, five aggregates, one of the aggregates has to represent, has to be an illustration of the I. So the Prasangika school, there is no illustration of I within the aggregates. So Prasangika schools there's 100% is the relatively existence. Right? So the self as a portal that exists, right? The self as a portal that exists by depending on the pot. So the potter is not in the pot, but potter happen to exist because of the pot. Right? The carpenter exists by depending on the tools that make the tables and like that. But the carpenter never exists in here within the woods or the what do you call sewing machine or what do you call the wood that cuts. Right? So the Prasangika school says, you see, this is how the carpenter exists, this is how the potter exists, this is how the president exists, this is how the manager, secretary exist. If you try to find, so wait, it has inherent. No, there is no inherent. So, and like, and similarly, every phenomena, like favorables, when you have the favorable and unfavorable are not apple and orange. So the Prasangika school is nothing inherently exists, everything is relatively exist. So yeah, so here the important thing is what the point here trying to make is to negate some things. So first you should recognize the very negation element that you're negating, right? So yeah, so innate grasping at true existence. So here, the most important, the kind of the elements of the negation element that, because so is here is innate grasping at true existence, because this is the root of the samsara. So innate grasping, which persists since beginningless time and is present both in those whose mind are tempered by the philosophical tenets and in those whose mind are not thus tempered. So who has knowledge of the philosophical or ordinary, who has no knowledge of any philosophical, it shares exactly the same innate grasping of self. So
Can you review what is the innate grasping again?
Innate is more, it is not, innate means that you have kind of, the concept or the perceptions that is not really tempered by the philosophical thinking or any information that you have heard. It's more like natural, right? So including animals and the God beings and the human beings, we have, from the beginningless, we have habituations of viewing the truly existing of the entity, right? And then that can be, the maybe you say tempered, or that can be proven, right? Proven by in the philosophical thinking. Like for innately we all, including animal, innately we think. Whenever we think of I am, we always have a feeling, right? It's a more natural feeling, the I which exists by itself. So that is the innate. And then the additionals, then you study the philosophical, the tenets, and then says, oh, some of the non-Buddhist school, if you study non-Buddhist school philosophical tenets, and then they says, yeah, so that I, that it appears all the time as independent, right? So this I is always, when this is my eye, my nose, my body, my positions, always is. So it's always appears to the mind as independent or intrinsic existence. And then philosophy says, yes, it is true. It is not the wrong perceptions. The I, the self, has to be independent because this I is not the body, right? It has to be independent from the body because it is not the body. It has to be independent from the I consciousness because this me is not I consciousness, right? This has to be independent from my feeling, the suffering and joy, the neutral state of feeling, everything belongs to me, or these are mine. So therefore, I am independent from those feelings. This is the philosophically, what do you call it? Increasing your stupidity. You already have stupidities naturally, and then that really, make it more stronger, giving a strength through the misconception, through the philosophical thinking. Because it's not me, therefore I has to be independent. Right? Is your house independent of your doors and the windows? Because your house is not your doors, it's not your windows. So, and then if the house and the door and the windows are independent. So if you want to move your house, so if someone kind of throws stone on your windows, what you say is, he destroyed my house, right? You cannot say it because you believe the house and the window are independent. Like if someone throw the kind of stone on the how's that cow, do you say he hit my horse? They hit cow and horse, the two independent. So when someone hit the cow, we don't call he hit a horse. So why would you say if someone throws a stone on your window, she hit in my house? So that's, we already have the ignorance, right? Not knowing the reality, and then the kind of, giving a strength by invalid reasoning as make it stronger. So that's the call, without contaminated by the philosophical, right, informations. And naturally, when we see the truly existing of I, it's called innate, right? Innate.
So in your example of the rock hitting the window, and you say he hit my house, you're saying the house is conceptual, so he hit the window. It'd be more accurate to say he hit the window.
When someone hit the window, you say he hit my house. So which means that innately you don't believe the house is independent from the window.
Okay.
Right? That's why you say it. So what you innately sees as two independent phenomena, apple and orange, cow and horse. So if someone hit the cow, you don't say he hit the horse.
Right.
So like the horse, like house is not independent from the window. So therefore the self or I should not be independent from your body, from your consciousness. Right? If someone disappoints you, so he disappointed me, right? If someone say your nose is not really good shape, so you say, how dare you telling me, right? So you're saying this to me, right? If someone say your cow is not good and you cannot fight with person, how can you say things back to my horse? So these are philosophically invalid through the invalid reasoning and tempering your innate ignorance, right? So which means giving a strength, kind of backing up your stupidities that naturally it's from the beginningness. So it's not you, it does not mean you are independent from that. So each person, we are not a country, but the country is not independent from the person, right? So not you is they're not necessarily independent from you. So yeah, the purported true existing, grasped such innate mind. Without identifying these, one might engage in eliminating the object of negation through reasonings. So without identifying these, one might engage in eliminating the object of negation through reasoning, but this would not undermine whatsoever clinging to the true existence that persists since beginningless time. So he's saying that how many times you have powerfully negated the self-sufficient I, it won't any change to cut the root of the samsara. Right. So to cut the root of the samsara, you have to deal with the root of the ignorance. That is the very innate ignorance, which is the grasping of self. Right? Not the grasping of self-sufficient. So it can be useful, it can be helpful to prevent the kind of, some of the kind of, misconception, but it's not really going to deal with the root of this samsara. So, so innate, here's persists the beginningless time, and thus miss the entire purpose at hand. So, which means if you study the Vaibhashika school and the Sautrantika school, just by following the Vaibhashika school and the whole life, and the Sautrantika school following whole life, right, and trying to seek for the path to liberations, there is no path to liberations. These are the stairs that you have to step on, but you have to leave behind each tenet and going forward. And then you may find the path to the liberations. Like if you want to go, into the house, right? So you say, "Oh, I'm going in that house." So if you just stick with one stair, the first step, so "Oh, I'm going here," so just sit there. So you have to move from the first stairs, then second stairs, and then third stairs. Then you have to push the door and see inside. Right? So in this way, if you follow this Vaibhashika school, don't just stuck there. You have to move from the Vaibhashika school and the Sautrantika school and the Mainanda school and the Prasangika schools. So similarly, to enlightenment, to kind of for the enlightenment, there's a Lamrim Shamati called it, three vehicles, like ordinary and what's called middle vehicle and the great vehicles. So means, for example, like ordinary means the lower vehicle. Lower vehicle means who find the kind of who find the essence in the kind of essence in the path to cultivate the positive activities of the merit to be born as a higher rebirth. That's the kind of lower vehicle, right? So now here says this is not whole purpose. So from this you may kind of you may kind of tempt yourself to be more moral, more kind of positive. But the being positive and being moral is not the whole purpose. And then the next vehicles, the middle way, right? The middle vehicles. Middle vehicle means now seeking for the liberations, seeking for the elimination of the suffering. That is another steps, right? And seeking for the kind of elimination of the suffering, cause of suffering. So this is not the whole purpose again. this is not complete, right? So, and then the great vehicles means now kind of, I think aspire to overcome the suffering of all sentient beings, right? So, which means that include the great compassion and the wisdom that the wisdom that used to kind of apply the antidote for the cause of the suffering. So you have antidote, you have the antidote for the cause of suffering. You also have the great compassions that the happiness is not just for oneself and for everybody. Right? So this is how this kind of lower vehicle, the middle, and then the great vehicles. So this is like always typical, even the path, knowledge, the scriptures, teachers, traditions, they all we have to kind of, there's one term that abandoning like a boat, right? Abandoning like the boat or bus or the taxi, right? When you get to the airport, you have to abandon the taxis. So it is not like the boat abandoning like a boat does not mean you don't like that. So you find this is the kind of and this can be useful to get to the certain destinations, right? So knowledge is like that, the scriptures are like that, and then the the different those Vivasika school and the point of view, Sothantika school point of view, and mindfulness school point of view, and the So this whole, and finally you have to leave and go beyond. Even the scriptures, the Buddha's teachings. If you continuously rely on the teaching of the Buddha, which means you have never complete. Right? Some people use the book to sleep. So they have no interest in understanding the essence of the book, just simply to to sleep. So I think this is how this is what it means. So if you just start with one, and then it says it misses the entire purpose at hand. So now to do this, we must first identify the grasping at true existence that lies within our mind, our own mind, and understands how the various Madhyamika reasonings function directly or indirectly to eradicate its object. So it's all this Madhyamika masters, they have laid out the reasonings. Some are directly, it is kind of directly negating the intrinsic natures. Some indirectly. That's right. So negation and affirmations that are directed solely outward will have scant benefit. It's not much. Now, the studying about the Madhyamika school and the Sothantika school, this is, I think, always kind of, always case for the students when they study philosophy debatings. I think it's very common to the peoples. They always think when they study, they hold this knowledge to show off, or hold this knowledge to defeat others, hold this knowledge to pass the exam. So it's like if you have this kind of intentions or the motivations that continuously kind of sustain your interest in study, and your study may have benefit but very less, few beneficials.
Is that what that means by the directed solely outward?
Yeah. So solely outward, just to kind of to tell people how knowledgeable I am, or to I studied this just to pass. I want the best grade, right? I want the number one. So just for that purpose, if you study, then says so we'll have scan and benefits, which means very. I think the way you are motivated, and how you, through these motivations, how much you understand, and how can you use this knowledge, right? Or very superficial. So the benefit from that knowledge is very little. So on a related note, if one can understand the identifications of what is to be negated according to the Prasangika Madhyamika and the Savatantrika Madhyamika, one will be able to appreciate as a fine difference in their views. Now here, Lama Tsongkapha will want to compare this. There's two Madhyamikas, Madhyamika Prasangika point of view and the Madhyamika Savatantrika point of views. So trying to show the difference between these two point of views. So identifying the grasping at true existence according to the Savatantrika Madhyamika standpoints, and identifying the grasping at true existence according to the Prasangika Madhyamika standpoint. Now first, Madhyamika Savatantrika, identifying the grasping at true existence according to the Savatantrika Madhyamika standpoint. This has three parts: identifying the true existence and the grasping at true existence, which object and the apprehensions. Right. The second is presenting the truth and falsity within the context of worldly conventional through the analogy of magicianal illusions. So this particular Madhyamika Savatantrika, there's a many kind of like the example of how things do not exist truly, reflections, mirror image, mirage, and dream, and so there are so many. So the Madhyamika Savatantrika particular, they find the magicianal illusions is the best example to kind of to present their understanding of the not truly existence, untrue. So explaining the analogies related to it, relating it to the actual reference. So then this is the Madhyamika Savatantrika school illusion, like kind of magicianal illusions. So magicianal illusions means the illusions that is originated or generated or produced. There's some the main factors. So the illusions, right? Magicianal illusions is produced by in all time there's some magicians through the kind of tantric. So they have some certain mantra to recite, and then they spell on some kind of, the rock or the wood or anything. And then it creates the magician illusions. So the Madhyamika Savatantrika is saying that this whole illusion that we see is a product of many cosmic conditions. So if once it is the product, it is being produced, so it has certain percent of the truth, right? It is not because of you, I have a problem. It's not because of the, so out of emotional, it projecting it. So this whole, the magician illusions is produced and created by this mantra and then the pebbles or any wood or something. So whole together, it's producing it. Like tomato born from the tomato seed, and there are some of the cosmic conditions. So there's certain true natures. This is what the Savatantrika school is saying. Yes, it has intrinsic nature, but it has intrinsic nature, but not whole true. If the illusions appears as a horse and elephant, there is no horse, there is no elephant. So this much untrue. But the shade or the color that you see it's being produced, truly produced by this, the pebbles or the tantric. Or you can say it's now there are some magicians, they create things with trick. So the whole their physical kind of flexibilities are the cause to create that illusion. So without his flexibilities, without his skill of making things appearance, and that the magicianal illusions cannot be possible. It's not possible. So the magicianal illusion is the product of its own cosmic conditions. So this is why the Madhyamika Sautrantika school say every phenomena, any phenomena or any entity that's produced by the cosmic conditions that has always certain degree of the intrinsic nature. It's intrinsically exist. But but when it appears as an elephant or horse or whatever the end is we see, this can be mistakenly perceived. So the Sautrantika, what they want to say by setting this example, choosing the particular example, the magician illusions, because they want to assert that we believe intrinsic nature. So there's many kind of examples, and they choose this, the kind of magician illusions is the best to present their point of view. So yeah, presenting the truth and falsity within the context of the worldly convention through the analogy of the magicianal illusion and explaining the analogy by relating it to the actual reference. So actual reference here is what they want to kind of, to prove is things do not truly exist, but things do exist inherently. Right? So then now they divided the things in two. One, yes, it is intrinsically exist. And the second is it is not true as it appears to the mind. Right. So this is the Madhyamika Savatantrika. So identifying true existing and the grasping of true existence, other reliable treatises of the Savatantrika make no clear identification of the object of negations. So, as I mentioned earlier, by setting this example, by selecting particular kind of, the example, right? Example that implies they do kind of, believe or accept intrinsic nature, but when they say it's not truly exists, is that is it's not true as it appears to the mind. So this already implied. So yeah, identification of object with negation. But Kamalashila, the light of the middle way. So Kamalashila, light of the middle ways, presents a criterion for conventional existence. So he kind of, present how the conventional things exist. So the opposite of that, the contrary of which can be recognized as the constituting the criterion for ultimate and true existence. So whatever the opposite, what is the opposite of and conventional is what they believe as a truly exist. So whatever they say, this is the truly exists, and then they kind of negate the truly exist, you have to follow this particular the truly existing kind of, the way of the truly existing is negating, not intrinsic natures. So I think this follow like and the Chandrakirti's, Bhava Vivek, and the Asangas, and the Vasubandhus. So they all follow this middle way Savatantrika. So here is what the text says, the Kamalashila middle way, light of the middle ways. Though things do not possess the essence in realities. So he is stating that things do not exist by their own essence, because this is the common, the language or the term that is used in all Madhyamikas. Right? Things do not exist by their own essence, like in the Rice Seedling Sutras, as mentioned, and Nagarjuna's, Buddha Palitas, and the Kamalashila too, using the same language. Things do not possess essence in reality. So then this is the erroneous, right? Erroneous mind. What's it? How do you pronounce this? Reifies.
Erroneous.
Erroneous.
And rarefies.
No, I'm still reifies. Yeah. So what is the reifies?
Makes it truly exist.
It means to divide. It's a duality. To divide things. To divide things like true and untrue.
So the erroneous mind reifies them, the contrary to their natures. This erroneous mind is called conventional, sammithi. Right. So now the Kamalashila is saying that although things do not exist by their own essence, now out of misconceptions, this ignorance kind of, so this out of this ignorance, things seems to be exist by their own essence, right? So the perceptions with perceiving in that way are the conventional. So it's more pointing to the perceptions rather than the object. So it's like things, although things do not exist by their own essence, but you have the habit, or you have the habituations of perceiving things do exist by their own essence. So that very perceptions I'm going to call is conventional. Right. So it's kind of, this is how the Kamaleshila stated. So he directly, where he pointed as a conventional reality, conventional is the ignorance itself. So considering the criterion of the ultimate true existence, here is what text says. Though things do not possess the essence in realities, so reality, things do not exist by their own essence, the erroneous of the mind refines them contrary to their natures. Means now there's this mind. So that very ignorance or misconception is seeing things contrary from what is the nature. Right. So that the mind is the conventional. So this conventional, and the Sanskrit, the term they use, samvritti. Samvritti is literally concealer. It's a deceptive. Because as it were, it obscures the suchness, or through it, suchness is covered over. With this mind, it hiddens or it blocks to see the reality, right? Nature of the reality. It conceals the nature of the reality. So and then as the such sutras state, the arising of the things on the conventional samvritti, on the ultimate, there is no intrinsic nature. That which is mistaken toward no intrinsic nature is held to be concealer, samvritti, right, of the perfect truth, which means something that obscuring the truth, right? Ultimate truth is the conventional. So you can clearly see the difference of how they present the conventional, right, in the Prasangika school, in the Svatantrika school. This is, So
could you explain that difference between Prasangika and Cittamatra? I don't quite get that. It seems like this is making a general statement that things are not how they appear in conventional reality. But I don't see, or I don't recognize at this point, how it's different between these two schools.
Let me say in the Prasangika school, if this question is raised to the Buddha Palita or Chandrakirti, so this is, it's not kind of, there's, they would say anything that's relatively existing, anything that exists relatively are conventional reality. That is called conventional. That can be deceptive, that can be concealer, that can be a condition of the obscure to see the emptiness. So at the Prasangika schools, it's a very, this is like, the presentation of the kind of, how they present the conventional is very, very clear and very simple. So when this same question is raised to the, Svatantrika middle way, Svatantrika middle way has to be, this is, conventional means conventional, samvritti. Samvritti is the something that caused the veil to see the reality. It's something that blocks, and that's it, right? So it's not allowing to see things clear, right? So then, therefore, the conventional are misconceptions. So I'm pointing at the misconceptions is the conventional. This is more like, the Tantric middle way, the way they present the kind of, the definitions of the conventional is more like a, document. So Prasangika school is like you order in the restaurants, they will just provide you. It's just right. So documents are always not clear. So you can interpret in many ways, right? So, but they want to keep it that way to in the futures you may helpful to interpret in your own way. So the Prasangika school, what is conventional reality? So this is anything that's relatively exist. Very simple, right? And what, for example, what is the conventional this? Kind of give me the examples, and they say, oh, the arising, arising, right? Disintegrations. Arising is conventional, and arising is conventional, right? And then disintegrations conventional. Past, present, futures, coming, going. So all of them as a conventional realities. So all this reality become the reality relatively, not by any entity that it not exists by itself. Each entity exists by relating up on another. So that is the conventional. So they saw Tantric, when they ask question, what is the conventionals? They always says, what blocks, what obscure to see the emptiness is the conventional. So then, and then if we ask another kind of the further questions, what is that? And they say, oh, that is the misconception. That is the ignorance. I think there's some kind of, because of the, they're constantly asserting that each phenomena should have certain degree of intrinsic nature. So I think that's what they are afraid to directly go with the reality.
Sounds like they have one foot in middle, mind only, and one foot in.
So that's why it's more like documents. Documents are always like that, right? So it's up to the individuals that, people who read the document, so you can interpret in different way.
So they almost sound like the veil or ignorance is independent entity. Is that the way you explain it?
It's more like a veil itself is the conventionals, because the veil is the one that obscuring to see the object clearly. So, and then if we ask again further questions, does that mean the conventional are misconceptions, and other than misconceptions are ultimately exist? Then there's no. Like pot, human, like trees, law and cause and effect. These are not conventional, because these are not misconceptions, right? And then this is, oh, these objects, this object appears to the mind, right? The mind with here, the eye consciousness, nose consciousness, the tongue consciousness, body consciousness, the mental consciousness, which is engaging on each conventional reality, always guided and pinpoint by the ignorance. So I to see, for example, when you see something and you always thought comes, right? This is what you're seeing. So the eye consciousness, no power. So yes, you have to say, yes, I am this. Right? So if, like, for example, It's auspicious, inauspicious things. Oh, this morning I had a good dream. So when you wake up, I was very happy. So then we said, this is what you dream. Therefore, this day should be auspicious to you, right? And then you are kind of, when the thought overpowered on you or imposed on you to accept this is auspicious day. So if you have bad dream and then your consciousness, your thought consciousness, oh, this is the bad day for you. So this is how we, like for the small children, when the parent they hide gift under the pillow, and in the morning this is the God give you this gift, and he said, yes, I can see this is from the God. So, right? So the I has no power. I has no power. It's all the mind. So it is similarly, the Madhyamika Suttantika school says, when the I sees things, at the same time you have identifying, you have a naming, you have labeling. So when this comes, the misconceptions always, is like, guidance. And the misconception says that is the reality that exists out there. So this is why these are not truly exist. Yes, it seems very kind of very sometimes you say some people when they do the presentations and then looks very knowledgeable, but it's no one understood clearly. So, so where he used the language, the terms, and he kind of the expressions looks very kind of there's so much weight in there, but so no one has sense. Yeah, I think it's a whole because of they are not really frankly with the object, because this is a non-Buddhist school, and in many of the school we are religious kind of the religiously thinking is you are not you try not to. I think it's one maybe there's you have never any interest to be closer to the reality, and you want to project the realities, so where you want, how you want, right? So the Prasangik school is always go much kind of bringing your mind closer to each reality, and then they create, this is the view, this is the point of view, this is the path. In this way I can see the liberation. In this way I can see the enlightenment. So anyway, yeah, where I am. Directly, indirectly is yeah. So in the sutra, the arising of the things only conventional. On the ultimate, there is no intrinsic natures. So that which is mistaken towards no intrinsic nature is held to be considered. So Tantrika midway, they quoted from the sutras. With that, they present the conventional is the misconceptions. Right. So by reading the literally of this sutra, So because it perceptions, because they originate from what is revealed, and namely all the false things being perceived as a state to be a conventional only. Erroneous mind, in turn, comes about from the ripening of habitual propensity to error that exists since beginningless time. So this now this the I think there's still the Kamala Shila. So you see, because it means because it, the perception of things, right? Because it or because these, this eye consciousness, this nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, mental consciousness, right? These originate from this, the erroneous mind. This originate by the misconceptions. What reveals, namely, all the false things being perceived. I think here in the Tibetan word they should read this. Sometimes the English translation is a little bit, sometimes it kind of flickers the meaning. Yeah. So Thoma Mewa the Chibi Paja Yonsu Mimbe Wangi Chong. They Yang Soja Tamjela. Yang Taba. We were Danyata when Yawa Temba. Yawa Temba. So Yawa Temba means almost like, this is like misconceptions with each perceptions, right? When the eye look at the color, so misconceptions there and says, the color that you're seeing is out there. It exists by itself. And then the air consciousness listen the ear, the sound. Then misconceptions comes again and says, this is the sound that intrinsically exists out there. This is what you are listening. Right? And then the tongue consciousness, nose consciousness, the body consciousness, even the mental consciousness. So you're conceiving or imagining anything. Every time there is the misconceptions, the guiding and pointing the object, right? So this is the what they're saying. It reveals what. So erroneous mind, what it reveals, that very erroneous mind is revealing or pointing, right? All the false things being perceived are stated to be conventional only. So that is how conventionals, right? So conventional, the first he's saying that is misconception is the conventional, and what has provided, what has pointed by the misconceptions are also conventional. So if someone like, for liar and he lies, right? Everything that he lies are not true like himself. He's liar. So like with the misconception is a liar, and whatever pointed, projecting there by this liar is all lies, does not truly exist. So it comes about from the ripening of now this very misconceptions and the erroneous mind is not temporarily, is from the beginningless. Like we have ripening of the habitual propensity to err that exists since beginningless time. That mind reveals entity to all sentient beings. Now, this misconception is constantly reminding every sentient being, saying things that you perceive, things that you smell, things that you see, things that you imagine, things that you name are all truly existing. Right? So Soja Tamjin, all sentient beings, if they were real in natures, and this, they all come to perceive. Therefore, all things that are false in their nature and are presented by the virtue of the power of mind of sentient beings are said to be exist only conventionally. Yeah, this is very, very much like a professor presentation. So hard to understand, looks very structured. So ready to can you publish self books? So up to this erroneous mind is in the first part of the citations indicate how beings mistakenly ascribe the ultimate existence to what are ultimately devoid of intrinsic natures. So yeah, up to erroneous is, and then first to these. Yeah, so this whole line, because it perceives the things originate from this, the erroneous mind, what it reveals, namely all things, all false things being perceived as stated to be conventional only. So this indicates mistakenly ascribe ultimate existence to what ultimately devoid of intrinsic natures. Now, from conventional up to covered over, right? So from conventional so conventional only is the erroneous mind in turn comes about from the ripening of the habitual propensity to err that exists since beginningless time. The mind reveals the entity of all sentient beings as if they are real in natures. So up to conventional to cover overs. So present the meaning of the phrase concealer of final truths. So it's the same things. It's something that obscures you to see the emptiness, the ultimate natures. Therefore, it's concealer. So concealer, the interpretations, the kind of this translations comes from in the Sanskrit. They use sambriti, so that literally translates as concealer. So which is another name of conventional reality. In the Tibetan, we call kunzup, and then kunzup is the conventional, and dibje is concealer or deceptive. So conceal the final truths. Here, the conventional is taken to be a concealer in that it conceals the final truths because it's originate from the grasping at true existence, that which sees what that grasping reveals as a truly existing is a thought. Now, another this professor so saying that now the conventional their point is pointing to the misconceptions, ignorance itself. So, and what is the then also they mention that things do not exist truly, right? Things do not exist truly. So what kind of minds, which part of minds that conceives of the grasping of the true existence? And then this South Hunting Madhyamika school saying that very misconception, right? The way that the kind of, where see things truly exist, it has to be seen by the thought, not the eye consciousness, not the nose consciousness, not the tongue consciousness. So this is kind of, big, debatable. The why thought only, right? It conceives, thought only perceives the true existence. Why not I? So some, one of the Suttantika, Savatantrika, so they, some days is the I consciousness is the kind of, which is directly perceives things as it is. So it's I consciousness perceives things directly as it is. So therefore, the I consciousness has no quality or kind of any characters that perceives things truly existence. So when you perceive the truly existence in a phenomena, which means that has to be taught. But it's very kind of,
sensory perception is conceptual, right?
So I think this is what we are not clear, because when this is why you are giving so much credit to the I consciousness. So saying the I consciousness cannot be mistaken, cannot be wrong perceptions, because it perceives reality as it is. Are you sure about the I consciousness like that? So the I consciousness, the constantly mistaken, even going by a tech car, if you go, I consciousness see things, all the houses and the trees going backward. How stupid that I consciousness is, right? So, right? And then I consciousness, it's so much influenced by the anger. I consciousness even see the white as a red. And sometimes the, physical kind of, illness that also impact on the eye and see something non-existence. So what makes you so much kind of trusting the eye consciousness? Oh, this cannot be wrong perceptions. Sometimes see some people think, this is very emotional. So when they're emotional, when they see picture, their grandmother's picture, or anything that belongs to their loved one, their eye consciousness is, yes, I am seeing that person. My grandmother's with this kind of, how's that, waist, or with this watch, with this, right? So eye consciousness so too with this, it really believes that they see. So, and then eye consciousness, when you look at with strong faith, looking at the statue of the Buddha, and eye consciousness, the tears. Oh, I'm seeing Shakyamuni Buddha. So this is how the I consciousness is not really, cannot be given so much credit to the so this is the authentic middle way is kind of saying that I consciousness does not perceive things truly exist. Right? So the question is, does that mean the I consciousness has no mistaken appearance of the truly existing of the phenomena? So why is that? The most of the things that appears to the I consciousness is mistakenly, many times. So why the truly existing of the natures, phenomena, are not appears to the I consciousness? So, so for example, if you look at the grandma's the photo, and you accept that I see my grandmother's with this picture. So I see, or you, so I consciousness is when you look at the photo, with this I consciousness, do you see the person? So with I consciousness, very strongly faith in the Buddha, just looking at the kind of statue, do you really see I consciousness, see the Buddha? If that appeared, but you cannot really, how say it? So there's always saying that it appears, that photo appears to the consciousness as a mother, as a grandmother. Or that status appears to the consciousness as the real kind of, Buddha, as a person, right? So, so if these are possible, why not truly existing of the phenomena, truly existing color, truly existing the shape is not appears to the I consciousness? Maybe Swatantric middle way says, this is what I want to say. So yeah, so grasping a true existence, and that which sees the grasping, what's that? Grasping reveals as a truly existing is a thought, yeah, is a thought, not the sensory cognitions. The momentary, as a commentary to the true truth, convention of the ultimate, state that the true existence, which is the object of negations, does not appear to the sensory perceptions, and this remain true here as well. So there's both Sautantric and middle way and agree on one thing is the sensory perceptions does not appear as the truly existing of the phenomena. So it's almost like there is no influence. There is no influence of the misconception to the sensory perceptions. So yeah, true truths state that true existence, object of negations to appear to the sensory perception. And this remain true here as well as. So as well means now like Swatantrika, Cittamatra, Swatantrika, so two, they all agree on that. From this erroneous mind, in turn, up to beginningless time, present this grasping at true existence to be innate. Thus, to all living beings is mentioned. As for the mind of these living beings, this is not, how to say, only conceptual thought. Now, so I think going back to the Kamalashila and the how to say Kamalashila commentary. So Kamalashila commentary, these things exist in the beginning of this time. The that mind reveals entity to all sentient beings as if they were real in natures, and this they will come to perceive. Therefore, all things that are false in their natures are presented by the virtue of the power of mind. So, things presented are things kind of being exist or made to be exist by the power of the mind. So that mind, so what kind of, are this mind only a thought? And then they says no, and sensory perceptions and the thought. So it's the power of the mind who kind of presented the phenomena, object. Now, when it comes to the truly existence, appearance of truly existence, and then this is only to the thought, not the sensory.
Did you say that part, that the true existence does not appear to the sensory perception, is agreed with Prasangika between Chandrakirti and Cittamatra?
No, the Swatantrika has a two. They both agree that they're both Swatantrika, not the Prasangika. There's a two school in the Swatantrika school. So they both agree on saying that truly existing does not appear to the sensory perceptions. So that is only appears to the thought. Right. And what is that truly exist? And then says, things do exist by their own essence without depending on sentient beings' mind. And then so what are the mind? So then thought and the sensory perceptions. So there's a kind of, I see this kind of, some something that is, tricky.
So they're including in non-conceptual thought, the realm of the non-conceptual, sensory, as if sensory exists independent of thought. But the fact is, you cannot totally separate, it seems to me, sensory from thought. This is like a case of reifying something in a way that is not authentically true. Pretending that they are completely separate faculties when they're interdependent.
Yeah.
I mean, everything we perceive with our sensory, our organs, gets edited. It's automatically edited. Even the moment we see it, it may be edited. We see someone is angry. the sense seen with our eyes or hearing their voice doesn't have a label process at all. But the fact is, you can't truly disassociate these two things as if they're separate.
Yeah, in that case, if the eye consciousness, sensory perceptions, and the conceptual, or the non-conceptual and the conceptual are not independent, so which means what implying is they share the object. So they share the object. Anything that appears to the conceptual, it appears to the non-conceptual, right? Anything that appears to the non-conceptual, it has to be appears to the conceptual. So I think so in the Savatantric middle way, I want to say that if the objects equally shares, and what makes the distinctions? Direct perceptions and indirect perceptions, conceptual and non-conceptuals. If they equally shares the object, there's no difference. So, this is the Savatantric school. They're saying the sensory perceptions, which is always engaged to the object, that is clearly closer or vivid to the sensory, right? Their sensory perception do not perceive the object through imagining, right? Through remembering, right? So this is what I think what they meant. So the truly existing of the phenomena, or truly existing of the phenomena, is always projected by the habitual kind of propensity that exists within the mind from the beginningless time. So which means now the truly existing of the object that appears to the mind is due to the, projecting from the projections. And the projections, the continuously projecting is from the beginningless time because of the strong imprints, the propensity within the mind. Now the question is, all these projections do appears to the thought, or it can be appeared to the non-conception, the sensory perceptions. So I think this is very much kind of, it's not really, it's a debatable, it's a debatable. And what they think is the mental projections, the characteristics, the attributes that projected by the thought do not appear to the sensory. Like, for example, eye consciousness, when you look at the forest, eye consciousness do not see a forest being separate from the trees. There's this tree that belongs to or including in the forest. This is never seen by the eye consciousness, but which is the object, which is the case that all the times that appears to the thought consciousness. So I think this is what they want to say. So every mental projections is for this particular school of thought, there's mental projections is a private property that always exists in the face of thought. So whatever the private object that projected appears, exists within the thought, it cannot be appears to the sensory perceptions. So now we can argue, for example, so when the eye consciousness first look at the object, and like, for example, looking at the tree or kind of, a horse or a cow or anything, just by looking at it, and that the second in your mind, and you have a thought with name. So that there is no between, there is no one in how to say, intervene, right? Intersect this thought and the direct perceptions. So how the thought come with name? So even the minority school, they say, the first eye consciousness, when you look at the color, or look at a cat or cow or anything, at the same time, there is some kind of degree of, because the independent is by itself, when it appears to be by itself. So it comes with identity, right? So eye consciousness looking at the pot, and pot appears to the eye consciousness with identity. So which means I am the pot. My name is pot. So my name is gold pot. My name is copper pot, right? So that is the kind of becoming the basis of label is mental projections. So yes, mental projection is constantly appear to the sensory perceptions. Now, the Suttantric school said, no, mental projections never appears to the sensory perceptions. Then we debate, and then we say, finally, just go out. Make the final decisions. Who punch first is So this is, I think, this how you see the different presentations. Why this particular saying that truly existing is the object that appears to the thought, belongs to the thought, not the sensory perceptions. So at that kind of continuously, if you kind of push them, they always says mental projections. Therefore, it not appears to the sensory perceptions. So it's hard to say. So as a Buddhist, so every time you see the image, statue of the Buddha, just by looking at, there is no time, there's no between, like naming this is the Buddha, or right? Here's the Buddha, right? There, eye consciousness does not really wait for the thought to naming it. That the minute that you see, you're just naming it. So so I think that's kind of how it's if the thought and the sensory perceptions, like totally different. They don't really kind of the direct object that never shares. And then each person, when you look at things, first they look at what do you call it? Then just recall mind, and mind says, yeah, this is the Buddha, this is the Nagarjuna, right? So instantly, just by looking at glance, and then you have a name, it's impossible. But this is always happening in our life. Even the birds, like squirrels, the birds, they all have this kind of habit. They're trying to express this, they saw something, right? So I think this is really, and then other side, the middle Suttantrika, also they're saying the sensory perceptions kind of guide and directed or driven by the sense power. And mental consciousness, thought, is through projections, right? Through the imagination, through the projections. So from the projections, and there's a thought that comes. And eye consciousness not follow the projections. So I think, yeah, they have the reasons. They have their own reason to say truly existing, appearance of the truly existing, that is the thought, not the sense of perceptions. So, and if you continuously push them, you can make them say, right? With I don't know, I don't see the Buddha. With I don't see my parents, but I keep the photo of the parents. So, right. So I think they have to say, right? So it's a photo that you are seeing. It's not the parent, but with that you see the parent, right? And are you seeing that with your eye or without eye? With eye. Yeah, I think. So meaning, I'll just leave it here. Mentioned with the beings. It's not only conceptual thoughts, it's also the cognitions to come to be presented by the virtue of the two classes of consciousness. And yeah, so that things do not exist on the ultimate level, and that these false entity exists only on the conventional level is the meaning of this line. The arising things conventional. Arising things is conventional. The meaning here, however, is not that they exist as the concealer, as the grasping true existence. Understood thus, an existence through its own. Now this have to be very important. This is the real definitions of and the Swatantrika, the truly existing means. This is existence through its own objective mode of being and not presented in dependence on so being perceived by the cognitions presented by the virtue of the power of the consciousness. Our cognitions constitute the true, the ultimate and final existence, and the grasping, and this is the innate grasping at true existence. So which means, what is the definition of true existence? And the South Tantric Middle Ways says things exist by their own essence without depending on consciousness. Right? So if there's a color that exists by its own essence without depending on eye consciousness. And, cause or the time that exists by their own essence without depending on your thought.
So they're saying that those kind of things exist.
That is the truly exists. That should be negated. That's not possible. Right?
I just was sort of surprised that so Tantrika middle way believes in intrinsic existence.
Yeah, so much to talk now. We have plenty time. So let's stop here. Chanju simja rinpoche, ma jeba na jeju je, jeba nyamba meba kondo kewa. Tonya dawa rinpoche, ma jeba na jeju je, jeba nyamba meba kondo. Pama simjen tamje dedan denju je, gendo tamje tado chanju simba kala sushu. Teda kunje molon drupju roje, kare rabe gobe shimazu kananda wama rojo wane. Jere simba tinzin jazu ye shabe side bado denju roje.
May the precious body mind at your own horizon grow. May the bone have no decline but increase forever. May the precious mind realize emptiness at your own horizon grow. May the bone have all these merits, may all Father and Mother sentient beings have all happiness, and may all lower realms be empty forever. Wherever there are Bodhisattvas, may all their prayers be accomplished immediately. In the sacred land surrounded by snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. More powerful change will continue. Remain in this world until samsara ends.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.